Welcome to yet another conversation of Sunlight and Candor. Today I'm so excited to have Maureen Waititu, and we are having a conversation on mental health. It is time that we have an unashamed conversation. It is also time that we also have conversations that focus on positivity, on instilling hope, and have conversations that really do not stigmatize mental health. So welcome, Maureen Waititu. We are so happy as Chiromo Hospital Group to have you here with us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's dive right into the conversation. Yes. Tell us about yourself, what you do, where you grew up.
I was born and bred in Nairobi, and a bit of, back and forth, shags back to Nairobi. I'm an only child of my mother, but also a step sibling to many siblings. Yes, went to school here, graduated here, worked here, but currently I'm into content creation, business, motherhood, and very many hats that I wear, including being a voice towards mental health and positivity. Yeah. Yes.
Wow, I love that. And I like that you said, I wear many hats.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
But also more specifically,
Yes.
Your energy and enthusiasm in having a conversation that is so stigmatized. And because we're having a conversation on mental health, how did you get here,
Wow, how did I get here? Again, typical Kenyan style of growing up. Mental health was not something that was frequently discussed. In fact, the first memory of maybe seeing somebody with a mental health is that guy in the streets picking the papers, and obviously it came around with a lot of stigma. Up until I joined uni, and fortunately studying law, it's very extensive. It touches on various things, and that's when I learned about mental illnesses, and still not in depth, but I was aware. And I knew that this is something that can happen to anyone. I didn't expect it to happen to me. Up until I gave birth to my firstborn, and I slipped into severe postpartum depression. I wasn't even aware of it until much later. I love reading. I love really researching. And then it hit me, oh my goodness, that was typically PPD. Meaning I was not opening the curtains. I was obsessing over my baby. I could go to shower and in 1 minute I'm out because I'm hearing as if my baby is crying. I didn't want to go outside. I was always crying. And then I was like, why am I like this? What's going on? Then later on, I learned that it's something that could happen, especially if there are certain circumstances. But then in terms of now, my most recent diagnosis, clinical depression and anxiety, it came about slightly later because of hard circumstances in my life. Probably a routine that I wasn't thriving in. And I noticed that I was always very sad, grumpy, snappy. I would have serious palpitations. I remember there's a time I had an asthma attack, and I was sickly all the time. Rheumatoid arthritis. My body was shutting down. And I would go to the hospital, and the nurses would tell me, your heart rate doesn't look right. Have you ever had issues with your heart? And I'm like, all I remember is the palpitations, especially at night. You can breathe, you're feeling constrained. Sometimes you're out of air, headaches, name it. And I could tell that my body was not okay. But then you're not in full acceptance because you're thinking, I'm a mom, I have toddlers, I have work that's stressing me, and many other things. But also I didn't have anyone to have the conversation with until 2019, when I went separate ways with the father of my children, and I realized I'm not okay. And for the first time, I picked myself and I drove myself to you. Actually, you were the first person who saw me. I remember coming to the hospital and registering, and I was being asked what's going on. I couldn't even control my tears, and that was the beginning of everything in terms of even knowledge and realizing that it's okay. These things do happen, and they're treatable as well. So that's how my journey began.
Curious to know, Maureen, like before you came to me, did you ever think you would go into therapy, or what were your thoughts about how therapy is, or a clinical setup is?
I just knew therapy from the movies per se, because I had never really had a sit down with anybody until I met you. So I had this perception of the couch, the couch, legs up, and have to pay hundreds of dollars, and I have to talk to my psych, or it was a very strange phenomenon for me, because what I expected and what I got were, it's like imagining coming into the city of Nairobi. You're thinking you find concrete, then you start seeing trees, then you see A, B, C, D, and you're like, oh, actually, that's not what I thought. But then it's a pleasant way of realizing that, again, this is what we're doing. We're humanizing this. We're saying it's okay. And for me to take the first step, let me tell you, I used to drive by Chiromolin in Westlands. And you look and you're like, yes, the head was like depression, schizophrenia. I could never, you don't think that could happen to you. And I remember I had a full-blown panic attack when I was waiting for the gate to be open, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the time to run, Maureen. Run, don't get inside. And then you get inside, you find normal people walking, you find everyone is just okay. No crazy people throwing things around each other. And that's when you realize, goodness me, it's just like any other situation. And it's sad because there's so much of it. And I feel like everybody right now, anyone who has the adult capacity has had a stressful situation that could lead to that, or as something they were born with, genetically acquired. It can happen to anyone.
It can happen to everyone. Yes. Statistics show that 1 in 4 people are likely to get a mental illness in their lifetime. And that's also not to say that the other 3 may not. Yes. They are also predisposed to the same risk factors, just like the one. Yes. And I'm glad that you're here to give this story, and to normalize and humanize this conversation, and to affirm that it's a time that we accept that it's okay not to be okay. I mean, it's absolutely okay.
Yeah, so let me just add this, and also for the 3 to know how to take care of this one person, because I have been in a situation whereby I've shared, and it's open that I am suffering. But then the person who I'm expecting to be kind and helpful towards me, they shun me. That has happened. And it's even worse that I'm a public figure and I've shared my journey openly, and you find people discussing you somewhere and they start giving you names. I think I've shared this with you. They're saying, this is the chick with psychosis. And someone's like, do you even know what that is? You don't even understand. Basically, she's mad, she's crazy. But they don't understand that it's not a straight cut thing, and it can happen to anyone.
Now that you talk about you being a public figure, how was the initial steps to getting to where you are in terms of acceptance? You coming to that gate, having the conversation with a therapist, did you feel pressured? Will people see me? Will they take photos of me coming into this space? Will this story get out, or will Gathoni go and share with somebody else? Was that at the back of your head?
To be honest, no. Bluntly, straight up, no. I figured I'd rather deal with that than them seeing me now collecting papers by the roadside, me not being able to take care of my kids or work or anything. I think that's a greater fear for me. Walking in, I think, is the bravest thing anyone can do. It's a brave thing to accept as well that something is wrong. And when I say something is wrong, don't self-diagnose. Just say, I do not feel okay. Can I seek help so that I can know exactly what's going on with me? And sometimes I won't walk in. Like the first time I walked in, you didn't tell me, you're depressed, you're this. No, you listened to me, you figured out my mental status at that point, and it was a journey afterwards. And look at us now.
Other than therapy and you getting the clinical depression diagnosis, how is it that you're able to still prioritize your mental well-being?
It's very simple. It's very simple. I come first above all, because if there's no me, everything else wouldn't be there. My kids wouldn't have a good, sober mother. I wouldn't create the content I create with joy, because sometimes, and this has happened, you put out content and it becomes very gray in there. You just come and read and someone's like, she's talking about the same thing. So I say charity begins with me. And so I'm very intentional about taking care of myself so that I'm not in a situation whereby I'm replacing. Because I say, if you try to escape it, it will always catch up with you. And the greatest pride I take is facing this head on. Not even just for me, because it's just like healing. If you break an arm and you don't go to the hospital, probably it will heal. But it will always be a bother because the bones were not put the right way. It's that simple. And I figured if I'm regular and accepting, even when, you know, now currently, you know, when I walk in and I'm smiling and I'm slaying, you know, Dr. Njuguna is always asking me like, wow, okay girl, what's happening? Then the person I saw, you know, the other time was not the same. And that's the joy I take. It's the intentionality. Do what you love. Like I love beauty, I love hair. It's small joys. And sometimes when I cannot take it, I just put it aside. But then I've also surrounded myself and put a system in my life that works so that when I don't want to be mommy, my babies are well taken care of because they're my peace and they're the beginning of my peace and the end of it. If they're not okay, I'm not okay. And so I'm able to consciously plan, share, strategize my life like a proper business. Same way we take care of things. Same way we'll have our nails done every month. Every day I have a routine for everything. So it's just being intentional about it, sticking to the message, and honestly owning it. And when I'm not okay, I will say I'm not okay. And when I'm fine, we fly. And also, I know sharing is caring per se, but also seeing so many people just give or take from what I do every day, see me thrive. Because you don't see it, sometimes you won't see it, because I'm always on survival mode until I started living. You know, I was always like, we have to get up, we have to do this, we have to do that. And even at my worst days, I still would get up and go, but I was always on autopilot. I would do something, then you burn out, you don't remember anything. I'd go park the car, leave the door open, and you know, when you realize this is not going the way it's supposed to go, you step back. So I tend to be not selfish, but intentional, and not to feel guilty about putting me first, because again, I cannot pour from an empty self. Right. It's that simple. Yeah.
I love that you've talked about survival mode. It's reminded me of a lot of things, because a lot of people are really operating on survival mode. Here doing this, not actually taking time to step back. And even as you're sharing what you do with your life in terms of intentionality and your child, it's not because you have a diagnosis, but that's for every single human being. You should have time for yourself. You should have time for self-care. Even though you're mommy, even though you're a CEO, even though you're all those things, like really just take time for your own personal and self-growth. Because if you don't do that, then you're not going to be able to be the best version of yourself.
No,
You'll just wade through life.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, let me again also give another very important pointer, because this would happen to anyone, other than your therapist, who you'd probably see once a week, once every 2 weeks, or once a month. What I have done personally is I have informed the people around me, understand my struggles. So sometimes when I have a trigger that would make me extremely anxious or overthink and, get in the, not the very nice version of myself, they're able to realize that this is not her. This is just a moment, and there's a reason why. And I'm very determined. Every time something happens, yes, I will feel the pressure. I will do what I need to do at that point, but then I'll pull myself back as soon as possible. But again, remember, like I said, these 3 people who are not unwell, if they're not supportive of your journey, then it will never go anywhere. But how will they know? You have to select and say, hey guys, this and that is happening. And so even again, also my determination, other than being very much okay for myself, my kids and everything, I figured that I wanted to also be in a relationship in future, of which I am in right now. And I remember, thank you, yes, and I remember I was very open with my partner from the word go. And I told him, baby, it's like this. I'm struggling with this. I see a therapist, and anytime I'll ever have this, it's always an assuring journey. And even when I come for therapy, he's so supportive. He'll ask me, is there anything I need to do so that I can help with the journey? You see, I've been thriving.
Maureen,
Yes.
wait, hold on.
Yes. How did you get to that point? How did you get to the point of saying that even when I date in future,
Yes.
I want to be able to be upfront? Because
Yes.
I really genuinely feel that people are not very authentic and honest with each other when they get into relationships.
Yes.
And what you've said is very powerful, because this person is not only your partner, your friend, but that's also supposed to be your support system. How are you able to communicate that? Were there fears, in there? Will he accept me? Will he disown me?
Yeah, it's human to feel the fear, but I think it's also how the onset of the relationship begins. I said, you know what, I'm putting everything there. If at all anything scares him, that's okay. And what happens, the risk that people take is, one, they tend to replace, instead of really facing themselves and actually understanding what's wrong with them, they cover. They jump into another relationship, and then the cycle continues. My greatest fear was for me to have the cycle continue, and I say the only way I can stop it is if I really get honest with myself. And obviously you pray for this person who will understand, because someone else will hear that and they take off. But this person is like, thankfully he's very, very aware of many things in general. So it was nothing new to him. He was like, I understand, I know these things. I have a friend who is a psychologist, like that. So it becomes such a safe space, and you don't get to surprise them unpleasantly later. And anytime you're in that situation, honestly, you're able to resolve it. But for me, it's the safety. It's the safety of knowing that this person will take care of me if I'm never able to do so, and the thriving. Because whenever there's a bit of love injected into this, and I mean not the lovey-dovey love, but genuine care towards a person struggling with mental illnesses, they thrive. They thrive very fast. Yes,
I believe so. There is nothing that an individual cannot be able to achieve with the right support system. With the acceptance of your scars, the wounds that you have, and your healing journey. That ownership.
Yes.
That is really, really, absolutely powerful. As we wind this conversation, what has been your greatest takeaway in your 3 decades, where well-being, overall well-being is concerned?
Okay, so first of all, the obvious is that anybody can find themselves in this situation. And I think something also we discussed the last time we sat down was about productivity. There's this stigma that if you're struggling with mental health, you're not a complete human being. You're unable to do. And sometimes you'll find CEOs, the who's and who's, actually being aware that there's something wrong. But it's just like, it's like Homa, you know? Anyone can get Homa. Anyone can get, can break a leg. It's the same thing, only that mental health has been put to look like, people just think of madness. It's just not the case. It's as simple as a struggle with a certain thing in your body. So I wish there can be that, just demystifying the myth of mental health is madness. Yeah. It's not. It could be depression. There's a variety of that. Yeah. They're treatable. Just seek help. It's that simple.
One of the things that I'm very keen on is to help people understand what mental health is exactly, because mental health is neither the presence or the absence of an illness. Actually, the definition says it's the overall well-being of an individual, whereby one, you're able to realize your own potential. And I ask myself and the people around, are you living a life where you're able to realize your own potential? Right. Two, yes. Are you able to cope with daily life stresses? Right. That also tells us we are going to experience stressors.
It's true.
The imagination that you will never, or at some point you will not have a stressor, is a false expectation. Yeah. Thirdly, be fruitful and productive. And I ask people, are you being fruitful and productive in your work, at home, in your social circle? Are you truly, when you have that conversation with you, are you being fruitful and productive? Yes. And the last part of the definition, which is one of my favorite, and be a contributing member within the community or within the society. Wow. So it's not me, yes. As in I know my potential, yes. I'm dealing with stressors, I have a good job. Are you, what contribution are you making around you? And if you're not able to negotiate all those things, which every individual at one point or another will do, it means that, or not, you're experiencing bad mental health. So it is the not attending to your poor mental health that will eventually lead to all these things that come, thereafter. In regards to you prioritizing yourself, and you have shared that also well, what are some of the self-care tips that have absolutely worked for you? What are your A1 self-care tips?
Wow, that's a good question. The normal standard ones. I feed this body well. That's something I had forgotten completely. I sleep. I no longer find joy and pride in saying, I only did 4 hours this week. No, I will sleep until I get well rested. So, just getting rid of that guilt of rest, I exercise. I love my bathroom routine, and I mean morning and evening. I will shower, I will scrub everything, moisturize, serums. Like, I really love just taking care of even my physical body with my hands. And then, a bit of makeup and hair and nice dresses, they bring me joy. And then whenever possible, I will, have me time, disappear. But on a day-to-day, I do have the first hour of my wake-up time. I do not leave my room. In fact, the routine I've created in my family, they know do not go there. And they'll know because I'll put prayers like on YouTube as I do my little things. I'll have my coffee, and then now I can come out rejuvenated, to say hi to the boys. So every morning there's a happy mom walking out. I don't want them to just see a grumpy mother. And basically anything I feel like I need to treat myself with, I go out. Remember, we're always saying, oh my goodness, I wish this person can spoil me. I wish this person can buy me this. if you can afford it, why not buy it for yourself? So that's what I do without guilt. Yes.
Amazing. Yeah. Remember, if you're watching this, please share with us what are some of the self-care tips that have worked for you. If you've not found a routine, try as many self-care tips as you would want, then identify what really works for you.